Now, I want to introduce a terminology that most of you, maybe the companies are familiar with it, but back in 1977, NASA, the American Space Agency, came up with this table called a TRL table. And it was very simple. TRL 9 was called ready to launch. There's this new gadget called the mouse, and the question was, is it ready for launch? Is it ready for liftoff? That's what they used to say. And somebody says, no, it's TRL 1. TRL 1 means it's in somebody's head. They have this concept of doing this. TRL 2 and 3 means they're working on it in the laboratory, so it's definitely not going in the next launch. TRL 4 means, yeah, they proved that it works, pretty ugly, but the dot moves across the screen, and some guys proved that you can move this little wheel and the dot goes across the screen, but it's certainly not going on the next rocket. TRL 5, 6, 7 means we're making it a little bit nice looking and so on. So they developed this kind of table called the TRL table from 1 to 9. Now, in 1984, this guy was supposed to be one of the top 5 computer experts in America, and he said, there is no evidence that people will use these things. So can you see what the universities are down here? So now what they've now done is they've drawn a similar table for social science. Now they call it GML, SRL, but don't get too tied up with the numbers. I have an email actually in my inbox at the moment. What number should I use? Is it 5 or 6? Forget about that. Look at this. Now what the universities do is science push. There's somebody doing research and they have a concept. Now, once the concept is kind of proven in social science, for example, if we said people that play computer games become more addictive or less addictive or whatever, this kind of people are playing around with these, analyzing data. And did you notice that I have a woman in Iceland? This is her project. It's called the Life Course Project. It's actually a little bit related to your childhood. She's doing research on when a woman gets pregnant, they analyze the biological condition of the woman, the psychological condition of the mother, and the environment in which she lives to see, can she predict adolescent behavior? Who will be most likely to be a drug taker, addiction? So she's trying to predict, given these environments, could she predict even at that level? So people making policy then could be more aware. She got 2 million to do that in Iceland. But she said, will it work? We'll see. So she's doing basic science, and you can imagine for your work, trying to predict at that level, what changes could we make to policy. But she's doing pure science on this in Iceland. So that's called science push. Now, if she proves that, wow, this works, she'll then set up trials all over Europe to see, is it just an Icelandic issue? And she'll do that's called application or applied type of research. But what you do and what these people do is with problems to solve. So can you see the difference between what goes on in the university? Oh, let's try these things. Whereas you're saying, we have a problem to solve. One is called, we're trying to demand pull, and the other is kind of science push. So can you see what the universities do? They dream. Will it work? It might work. Like the guy doing research on the rare disease, he'd never met somebody, but he was doing research on it. And so again, sometimes it's very theoretical, but the woman in Iceland is now on the United Nations advisory group on drug treatment, because they reduced the amount of drug addiction and alcohol addiction in Iceland based on her work. So she went kind of beyond what normal university people do. This is what the research centers do. And you could even put the institutes of technology might be a little bit closer to the application, but where do you fit in? This is where you fit in. Can you see the difference between what you do and what the universities do? The concept is validated and the concept is ready for deployment. So there's a nice diagram for a consortium. So we've a university, a research center, and you're in there doing this kind of practical work. Now, I want to introduce two words which I hope will be the two words that you take from today's course. It's called a living lab. That's what you are. Isn't it a lovely set of words? What are we? We're a living lab. Now, in the case of the PROACT project, the nursing home in Dundalk was considered a living lab to test the technologies. Now, search this European network of living labs. So when you go to the scientists and say, look, we have this, where's the people from the village or the community in Wicklow, where is it? Where somebody this morning was developing it. It was a community area, and they were looking at how to do, community development. So you have all these philosophies of how to develop innovation at a regional level, or you're doing social science, but here is real people, and we're testing the concept on those. Now, that's the big new thinking in Brussels at the moment, and it's really showing the difference between what you. So when you're communicating with the universities and research centres, you have to say, well, what we're bringing to the table are real people. We're a living lab. So and Google living labs and check it out. It's a whole big concept in social science. And Sylvia, when we were in Brussels, there was a project on manufacturing. And they picked a real factory where they were testing it, not setting up a pilot. And the commission said that's why we picked that project, because it was real. That coming back to the word real again. And so the scientists, when they're putting in their proposals, you're not a passenger anymore. You could actually be the driver. And in the proposals, they're asked, what's the science and what's the impact? And you're like the impact partner in the projects. So they won't get funding unless they have somebody like you on board. Now, if I was here 3 years ago, you would have been a kind of a token partner, whereas now you're a main driver in the projects and so on.